In this video, we are going to learn about code splitting. So first we'll see what is code splitting, how to achieve it using some custom naive implementation using, let's say, dynamic import, which we can do on our own. And then we'll see a pattern in React, which is used using React.lazy in conjunction with React.Suspense. And then this thing is already inbuilt in React, and we can use this to achieve code splitting. Okay, so first of all, let's try to understand what is code splitting. So you can see that when a particular bundle is created, so for example, let's say when we do npm run build, then what happens? A bundle is created, right, which is going to be deployed as part of our website. Then if you see, then everything, all the code in the entire JavaScript app, the whole thing is inside a single this file. You can see that everything is bundled into a single file, and which is a huge file. Okay, now you can understand that it might be, there might be a situation where, let's say, some components are not frequently used. Maybe some component is there which is like which is in used in a page which is very rarely opened, and even if it is opened, like then only I should load that, rather than packing those components as part of the main bundle. Why? Because if this main bundle becomes big, then our website will become slow. Why? Because if a bigger bundle is being downloaded on every load, then that is unnecessary. What we can do is that anything which is unnecessary, we can remove it from the bundle, so that our core thing, which is downloaded every time whenever a page loads, that thing should be as small as possible. Okay, so let me tell you what do I mean by that. So how do we achieve that? Firstly, what we do is that so let's say, firstly, see what is the setup. uh, there is a component in that there is a button next, and then if I click on that button, then a particular variable, let's say this user ID is incremented. Okay, and then this user ID is passed in a component which is user info, and when you click on this user info, it does nothing, just prints that hello user. Okay, so earlier hello user earlier 0 was there. So when 0 is there, then I don't want to show this component. But when it is 1 2 3 whatever, then simply hello user 1 2 3 etc is visible. Okay, so let's see this in action. Yeah, so we can see that initially the page is like this, uh, and why when I click, then this hello user 1 is happening, and then hello user 2. Why this 0 is happening? See, 0 is happening because when state dot user ID is 0, then 0 and this thing, if 0 and this thing, essentially that thing will short circuit here only, and the entire value will be 0, and that's why this 0 is coming here. If you don't want to hide it, then you can do something like this, that let's say rather than 0, this is null, and we know that null will not be rendered, but whenever there is null, I'll take it if it is null, then I'll make it 0, because null plus 1, even though it is fine, it will work, but then also I want to properly use it as 0 and then increment it. Okay, so yeah, and again here you can use a function style of setter also, so that is also fine. So now you see that now it will be like this, and where uh, if you click, then it will become hello user 1 and then hello user 2 3 4, like that. Now how this thing is coming, this thing is plain and simple. When this user info component is being used, then you will see that there's a class here, my list. Okay, and somewhere this my list class is defined, where I've given it a border pink and height of 250 pixel, right? And that's what it is happening, height of 250 pixel and border pink. Okay, now let's start the idea of code splitting. What we want to do is that if we directly import it like this, then what happens that from the root, okay, from the root, uh, whatever is imported, so it imports app, so it will go to app, it will bundle app inside the main bundle. Inside app bundle, whatever the components are there, again that will be bundled inside the main bundle. Again, each inside each of the components, so let's say greeting 2 is there, again inside greeting 2, whatever the components are directly imported, they will be part of the main bundle. If we want some component to be not a part of the main bundle, which means that we are not downloading them as part of the main bundle, rather we will download them when that is used. That's called lazy evaluation, right? So that I will not bother about anything about that component a priori. Simply whenever that component is used in the UI, that time I will try to download it, right? So you can understand that once the bundle is downloaded, then whatever the components are in the bundle, if they are again used, then that will be super fast because it is already downloaded. But the trade-off is that the bundle size will become like bigger, right? So what we are trying to do is here is that, let's say instead of this, I created my own component, which is something like this. Okay, and what it does is that now if you see carefully, that this component is sort of, we can call it async component. This is not directly imported, this, but still this can be used as a component. Why this can be used directly as a component? Because that is how it is created. You can see that this is actually a component, but you know what, initially my component is null and this is returning null. Simple, right? But as soon as the component mounts, then I do something like this, that I do something like await import this thing. Okay, now this is a special syntax, we have already learned about it. This is called dynamic import. In dynamic import, like here, if you directly import something from something, right, then this is like static import, right? In dynamic import, you just give the path as a as an argument of import function, and then the import function returns a module. Okay, and then we know that that module will have all the named values, all the other things. Default module or default will have the exported default value. So we can see that the user info component, you can see here, user info component does a export default, and that's why inside here the default one will be actually the component which we are interested in. Okay, so you can understand that it is something like this, that like this was default, and that's why we are using default. Let's say here, if we would be using something like ABC or something like this, then it will be ABC. Then here you are exporting something like, if you are exporting something, I don't know, export const ABC is equal to something, right? Then that thing will be like that. Okay, so this is just a example that in this case it is default, and that's why we are using it default anyways. So we are not using it right now like that. So if we imported it directly, then obviously this will be part of bundle. But now you can understand that this very thin wrapper code, just that is part of the bundle. But actually this thing is a separate bundle, and we will see that soon, that what do you mean by separate bundle, and how this helped in our size of the bundle, how the size is reduced. Okay, firstly let's see the output. So you can see that for earlier, every time just the bundle was downloaded and then everything was like as it is. After that nothing was downloaded. But now you see carefully that that the bundle is downloaded, that is fine. The bundle has everything but not user info. Why not user info? Because user info is not used right now, isn't it? What is the right now component value? Null. When it is null, then like this thing is this thing is null. If this thing is null, then I'm not being rendered. If this thing is not being rendered, then why do I need user info? You understand? So because it is simply not, it is not at all even being used, let alone what it is what is happening inside it. It is not even being used, because here only it is null, and from here only it is short circuited. This is not even used. If this is not used, then definitely user info is not used. User info is not used, then why to download user info? That's the beauty of code splitting. Now you see carefully that when I click next, then a new component is this. You can understand, you can see its file user info chunk. It is saying user info chunk. Okay, so this is a new component which is on the fly. When it is required, then it is downloaded. Okay, so you can see clearly here also. And then if you do something like this, if let's say I remove the earlier build folder and then I do npm run build, then you will see that this user info component will be a separate file. Okay, because that is not part of the bundle. So you'll see that this this is a production thing, so it will be a production build. But anyways, this thing is the main bundle which has everything, right? But this thing you can see is a smaller bundle where just this thing is there. What is there? Just user info is there. So if you see, if you copy something from user info, this pre tag is there. In pre tag, this hello user is there, right? So you can go here and see that these sort of things you can find, that you can see that this hello user is there inside pre tag. This is a compiled code, so it is difficult to read, but anyways, the JSX is compiled into pure JavaScript, and then it is here. So you can see that this is the component here. So this thing is loaded only when I need it. Okay, the names might be slightly different because right now we are running in dev mode. If you run, if you run this using serve, using the production build, then you will get the same names. But anyways, you get the idea. Okay, so yeah, so let's npm start. Okay, and let's continue our discussion. So we were saying that this is the, and again, like user info async you are using, and you could have used simple user info. The advantage of using the same name is that like you can quickly toggle. So right now it is like there is no code splitting. Right now I just commented and created a async version of it. Okay, so we have seen that, yeah, we have achieved the code splitting part, right? And again, you can do the same thing 5 times, 10 times, 20 times, wherever you want in the whole project, and whatever is the number of chunks you want to create, you can create to offload somewhat the bundle size of the main bundle. Okay, so yeah, but right now you can understand that this logic you have to like maybe like you can create a template sort of something, but then you have to create your own thing, and then yeah, and then you might want to do some optimizations here and there in this case. So what has happened that React has something called React.lazy, which does essentially the same thing, but it is inbuilt into React, which means that rather than this, okay, what you can do is that you can create a simpler syntax where you can simply say that const in the same way my user info is equal to React.lazy, and then inside that you have a callback function with import and whatever is the path name. So what is the path name? The path name is user info, and it's done. So this is essentially just a shortcut, right? Whatever you are doing here, that sort of thing is already done by React, and they give you a special syntax for this. Okay, now just a small point to note is that you see, this is a default, this is a default import, right? Now here there is no restriction. I showed you earlier also, right, that I showed you earlier also that I could have used any any other way also, and that would also work exactly fine. Which means that if it was a default export, then I am using default. I could have used named also, but I'm just trying to show you that React lazy has a this sort of restriction right now, is that the component which you are importing has to be default exported only. It has to be default exported. Named exports cannot be used in React lazy. Okay, and again, if you actually have a named export, then you can create a separate another wrapper component to do the default export. So that's not a big deal, but this is the structure right now you have to stick to. Okay, one more thing. So let's comment lazy for now, and let's get back to this thing. I think one thing of interest it can be that let's see in slow motion how it is happening. Okay, so if you click, then this thing is coming, that is fine. But if you do something like this, that let's say I went to network and I did some sort of let's say slow 3G, okay, and then I click, then you see what happens. Click, then it is downloading, and then after some time it is coming, right? So I have reduced the network speed. Now you can see that it takes some time. Now the problem is that while the component is being downloaded, this thing is empty, completely empty. Page means you can understand that like it does not look good, right? There should be some sort of spinner or loader or something like that. Okay, so you understand that right now you can see that it is started, but here there should be something. In general, I'll show you that how to do that, and then you can write anything. So for example, here while the component is not loaded, right, you are saying it is null, but I can say that I can have a div or a span, or in fact you can have a plain fragment also. But the idea is that right now let's have a normal div loading, and you can understand this is simple JSX. If you have some fancy spinner animating circle or whatever, you can add those components, and any React component you can add here, right? So in fact you can create it as separate component, design it, style it, and then import it and use that component here also. Okay, so I'm just right now directly writing a particular element here, but you can see. Okay, so now let's try to do the same thing. Okay, so now you can see that if I reduce the speed now, then as soon as I click, then you can see that loading is coming, and when the component has loaded, then this thing is coming. So this thing is this thing can be achieved like this. Okay, okay, that is fine. Now let's continue with our discussion of React.lazy, where we were trying to do with React.lazy. And if you pay attention, then you can see that right now the behavior will be exactly the same. So this is like this. When I click, then the component is loaded. Okay, and you see there is some error. Okay, so you can see that when I click, there is some error. Okay, and that is because generally React.lazy should never be used directly like this. So sometimes you can use it directly, but you should always avoid it. So let's say I have commented it, I'm not using any such thing. Let's take some normal value, let's say 5. I've hard coded some value, I'm just giving an example. So you can see that this thing is rendering, right? But actually this is not the way you should be using lazy. Okay, you should wrap it in a another component which is called suspense, and that is the way to use it, which means that I am saying something like this. You have to use something called React.Suspense, and in that you have to wrap it. This is the proper way to do it. So in this case, when I had hard coded, then you can understand that it's not any different. It's like same only, right? But let's see here now. Now you can see that here this error was coming. Why? Because that time things were static. Right now things are dynamic. Okay, so when things are dynamic and the like lazy component, whatever is there, that value is changing somewhat, then you cannot get away with that error, right? So you can use something like React dot suspense, and then you can wrap it, and now you can see that this thing is working fine. Okay, first of all I would like to say that this thing, this wrapper thing, to be precise, what happens is that it does not need to be just immediate child, immediate parent of this thing. You can understand, like this there can be another div, you can understand, it can be here also, so this will also work fine. Okay, apart from that, there can be some other things also. So for example, why should I put it here? Let's do something like this, where the whole React, this thing is, let's say here. Okay, and this whole thing is here. I'm just giving an example. Okay, so and then you can indent it, but the idea is that you can have it anywhere, as long as the other semantics are correct. Later we will also see that inside one suspense there can be multiple lazy components. So right now inside this suspense there is only one component which is lazy, right? Secondly, you have to understand that you don't do it this thing blindly, because till the time this thing is suspended, this thing is like suspended, unsuspended means when it has resolved, till that the whole this React suspense will not be visible. So right now you see that this thing is there. When I click next, then this is here. Okay, so let's see it in slow motion, isn't it? So again, let's try to do the same thing. Let's go to network, let's try to make it slow 3G, and then click. If you click, then you can see that next button has disappeared and then again appeared. That is because till the time this thing is loading, the whole thing, whole React suspend uh, is invisible. Okay, so it depends on you that whether you want this or not. If you don't want to this, then React.Suspense should not be at this level, rather it should be let's say at this level at least, if not completely internally, then at least at this level, right? So it is completely dependent on you. Now this React.Suspense, we earlier saw that there is a concept of loader, right? So can't I use something like this here also? Turns out we can do something like this here also. The syntax is almost similar, where there is a property here where you can, which is called fallback, where you can pass any element, React element, which means that again I can have any element. So I can have loading or something like this, and this will work as it is. So you can see that if I click, then it is, and while loading is there, there is no button, and that is because we just now saw it is how it was happening, right? So yeah, if we don't want then let's do something like this. Let's for right now, for simplicity, just move it inside. Okay, So yeah, let's do something like this, at least at this level. Okay, that's fine. Next thing is that while we are doing this sort of thing, loading thing is coming. What I'm interested in that this thing can be like not from native HTML tags. It can be any component, right? It just has to be an element, which means that let's say you can create a separate in fact component in itself. Let's create a simple function component called loader, and in that you are just returning this. You can create it more complex also, but just I'm giving an example that uh, React element can be created from custom components also. So that is just a simple example. Okay, and now you can see that next button is coming while loader is there, because I have moved it the button outside suspense. Okay, so I believe that now we have understood the basic structure of React.lazy and React.Suspense. Okay, now let's see one more thing, which is that let's use two components, like you rather than just one component. You can use any number of components inside any number of lazy components inside a suspense. Okay, so I'm just trying to just show you the second component. So you have seen that earlier this sort of component was there, right? There is another component which is exactly almost exactly same as user info, which is called user info 2. The only difference is here that I have just copied it from the previous component only. Just the difference is that here the color of the text is blue. Other than that there is no difference. Okay, now if you see, then obviously if you work with this, then it will be exactly same. Simply a loader will come, and then after that hello user 1 will come, and then 2 3, but the text will be blue. Other than that there is no difference. Okay, but what is the point of using this? So what we are trying to do is that now rather than having one component just user info, let's have two components, user info and then user info 2, and then we are going to use both components, user info and user info 2, both lazy components inside inside our code. So let's see. Right now it's let's remove our custom implementation. It is no more needed. Now let's see. Obviously this is also not needed, because right now we are making it, but let's keep it just for the sake of it, that this is not how we are doing, this is how we are doing. Okay, so user info and user info 2 also we have to use. So let's have a simple thing. So right now let's rather than null, keep it 0. I will make it null back, but right now let's keep it 0, and then we can do something like this, that let's say if this thing mod 2, okay, is not equal to 0, which means it is odd, then you use this, right? Otherwise you use this, which is user info 2. So when it is even, then you use user info 2. When it is odd, then you use user info 1. What is the first thing which will be visible? Obviously after 0. Right now I have changed it to 0, so obviously 0 will be visible. Okay, so when 0 is there, then it is even, and that's why this thing is visible, right? As soon as I click next, then it is 1, and 1 is odd, and that's why it is black, and then 2 is blue, and you can see that all the even numbers are blue, odd numbers are black. Okay, so this is how it is working, but I don't want this let's say 0 thing initially. I want it to be hidden. I want to start the counting from 1. So what can I do? I can keep this null, and then I can add some additional logic here. So let's say this whole thing is visible only when this thing is there, otherwise it is not visible. So when this thing is null, it is short circuited, so null is rendered. When this thing is not null, then only anything is rendered. Okay, so you can see that right now nothing is being rendered, and first time when 0 becomes 1, then the rendering starts from 1, and then 1 becomes 2. Okay, so yeah, so now it is working fine. Now let's see one thing, that how the loading of the component is happening. You see that right now we are having two lazy components, right? Which means that actually there will be a separate bundle for this and separate bundle for this. Okay, so both of them will be loaded separately. Okay, so let's see that. So right now you can see that this is one bundle is downloaded. Just let's clear that. When I click, then you can see that loading is there, and then one component is being loaded, and then this thing is there. Actually, right now what has happened? Right now it was like odd. It was odd, so this goes into this, and that's why it sees that user info is the one. You can see that this user info dot chunk. This thing is being downloaded, right? But if you click again, then again loading will come, and you can see that again second component will be loaded. You can say click and again loading, and this second component is being loaded. What is the second component? You can see user info 2. So now you can see that and now there will be like because they have already been downloaded, right? So no need to download it again. So you can see how it is working. The first time when the component is being used, when anything is being used, and if that thing is a sync component, that is not part of the bundle, then that lazy component is loaded at the time when it is used for the first time. Okay, so that is fine. Now this thing which is being used, which is being used here, you could use something like this also. So let's say I don't know, yeah, I'm just taking a weird example. So let's say you are using multiple components. Okay, so let's see something like this, that it is inside a fragment, and just I'm taking a weird example where I'm saying that okay, this user 1, user info 1, user info 2, both are being used here also, here also. The difference is that here firstly user info and then user info 2, and here firstly user info 2 and then user info, and exactly the same data is there. So yeah, so which means that is essentially it will be something like this, that initially user hello for odd, it is like firstly user info and then user info 2. For even, you can see that above is blue and then black, and for 3 again this is blue. Just a simple example I wanted to show you. There is a more subtle reason why I showed you this example. You see, what is happening is that right now what will happen is that when I click the first time, next, then only both the components are needed even to download, even to show hello user 1 also, right? Which means that right now the first click only both the components will be downloaded. Okay, so you can see the click loading, and then you can see that both are downloaded, right? And then hello user 1 and hello user 2. Now no more downloading because everything is already downloaded, right? So if I do now next, then it works there is no more downloading, which these are already downloaded. What is not clearly visible here is that these two components are of same size, isn't it? They are just they are same size, right? But let's say there are thousands of lines of code. One is, let's say one component is like 500 lines of code, another component is, let's say, 700 lines of code or 200 lines of code, whatever. There's a difference in their sizes. Then what can happen? Then what can happen is that when I'm downloading both of them, then maybe one is completed, another is not completed, or let's say second one is completed, but the first one is yet not downloaded. So what will happen in that case? See, so that's why this example is important, is that when there are multiple and this is like you don't need such a complicated example, even if you have some simple something like this also, right? Then also this also makes an example. Okay, so the whole idea is just that if there are multiple lazy components inside one suspense component. Till now we saw just one suspense component having one lazy component, right? But if there are multiple lazy components inside a suspense component, then what happens is that the loader is shown, this loader, whatever loader thing is there, this thing is shown till both of the lazy components are unsuspended. The term is unsuspended, but you can say that both are resolved or both are downloaded or both have been downloaded in the browser. Till that time, you understand, it's not that one is downloaded, then one will be visible and then other is being downloaded. No, even if one is being downloaded, then also the first one is completely downloaded, then also loader will be only visible. Only loader is visible. The whole both of them will be visible at once. Okay, after both of them are resolved. Okay, so that is what we are focusing on. So yeah, that was an example of that. Okay, so now we fairly have a good idea of this. It's just that whatever the example I gave you here, it is very easy to do the exact one-to-one translation in functional component also, right? So whatever we did here, you can see that exactly the same thing you could do in functional component also. So let's say instead of greeting2, which is a class component, I am using greeting, which is a function component. And then here also you can see that I'm using just two lazy components, and then instead of this dot state I'm just using a use state where some user ID is there, and then that is incremented in the same way. It is being if it is odd, then this component, otherwise blue component. If it is even, then blue component. So yeah, let's see that will be also exactly the same thing, just that here 0 is coming, that is just because here 0 is there. So I could have used here also null, and then I could have used some other variable, I don't know, like const user id uid, let's say, is equal to user ID or 0, and this will be UID plus 1. Okay, so initially when it will be null, then here it will be not 0, it is null, and null is not rendered, and that's why it will be not rendered. But as soon as I make it 1, now it is rendered, and a new component is downloaded. Click, it becomes 2, and a new component is downloaded. And then after that, no new components are downloaded because they are already cached, and then they can be toggling between blue and black because of the switching between user info and user info 2 components. So this translation to functional component is straightforward. Okay, now let's see one final thing. Okay, so for that I have to create an example. Okay, so I already have an example, so let's go back to class component, and what we are trying to do is that, yeah, so you see the problem is that I clicked, loading is there, and yeah, this component came, that is fine. Now if I click again, then this hello user 1 has to become hello user 2. That's what the UI will change, right? But unnecessarily, hello user 1 does not directly change to hello user 2. unnecessarily hello user 1, this thing changed to loading. You can see loading, and then it becomes hello user 2. So first time it is fine. First time it is fine because I don't even know the structure of the component. There is nothing, just this is just empty space. I don't have anything to fill here, right? So the only thing I can fill here is a loader. You can understand. So the first time when I'm doing, the only thing I can do is loader. I don't know anything. There was nothing before, and that's why loader was there. But now there is something. It's not that nothing is before hello user 2. Before hello user 2, hello user 1 is there. So something is there. So why to remove it and then show loader unnecessarily? Can it be a way? Can there be a way where I click and hello user 2 is needed, and till the time hello user 2, that component, second component, is not loaded, hello user 1, that component, previous component, is only shown. Turns out there is a way for that, and that thing is added in a recent version in React, where the thing is called support for transition of components. Okay, so what can happen is that in a component, when you are doing something like this dot set state or something, okay, that is fine, but actually directly using rather than doing like this, you can do something like this. You can wrap it in start transition. It takes a callback, and you can write anything inside this callback. But if you write anything inside this callback, then it is assumed that inside this, whatever you are writing, that is a transition, which means that if it is a transition, then even if you are doing set a state, then it will not change that thing. React will be intelligent enough to understand that wherever suspense and lazy are being used, I will not remove the old state completely and start the suspense loader. Rather, I'll handle it slightly more elegantly. Now you can see what is happening. If I click next, then you can see that yeah, loader is now also gone. Loader is also not also gone, right? So that is fine. We'll come back to it. We have to bring the loader back, but that is fine. But once hello user 1 is there, then if you click, then you can see that hello user 1 is only there, and then hello user 2, when it came, then it happened. There is no loader inside. But then we are successfully able to remove the loader from between between user 1 and user 2. But unfortunately it got removed from beginning also. So what we want to do is that when it is user id is 0, okay, so you can just write some logic. So actually whenever you use start transition, then this suspense thing is disabled, which means that neither fallback will work, not swapping to the loader, nothing will work, right? So whenever you do this start transition, so you do a small thing like okay, so fine, when if user id is equal to 0, let's say, then don't do start transition, then directly do set state, right? But if it is not 0, which means it is greater than 0 in this case, then do something like this. Yeah, so you can create your own somewhat logic, that is fine. And now you can see that if I do slow, then the first time loading is happening, and then hello user 1 came, and when I click, then hello user 1 is not there, and but 2 is there. But then you can understand, but now my requirement might be slightly complex, that let's say yeah, that is fine, that user 1 user 1 has come, right? But after user 1 is changing to user 2, after I have clicked, then it might take a second, 2 seconds. So yeah, so you can see that I'm waiting for user 2, and now it is changed to user 2. But while user 2 is being loaded, let's say I have to not hide hello user 1. Hello user 1 has to be there. But let's say after that, above here, let's say you want to have some icon or something, that just to indicate that some other thing is being loaded. How can you do that? Turns out that there is no direct way of doing that in in start transition, means you can do that. So let's say whenever you are starting a start transition, here you have set some variable that yeah, transition started or something like that, and whenever this thing is done, then you undo that variable that yeah, that transition is finished. You can do on your own in class based components. Turns out in if you use the same thing in function component, then there is a better way of doing this. And since this is a fairly new feature, so this way is already supported in um, function component. Okay, so let's see. So what we do till now? Till now we did something like this. We were saying that if user info something like this, we were trying to do. You can understand we were trying to do something like this, but rather than this dot set state, we will be using this thing. And again, this start transition, I have to import it. Yeah, so all in all is good. And now you can see that class component is also working fine. Okay, so yeah, now the point is that what I was saying earlier is that yeah, so let's see. I have to, yeah, I changed it to null. Yeah, so anyways, I don't know, I have to do it UID, not user ID, because this was slightly different. Anyways, these small things you can do. So I'll just yeah, so you can see that now loading user 1, and now clicked, and then after some time user 2 is coming, but user 1 is not going. Both are working fine, right? But let's see that transformation which I was trying to say, that till the time it is pending, let's say I want to show something, how can I do that? Okay, so for that what we can do is that there is something called use transition. Rather than start transition, there is something called use transition. Okay, and this use transition returns something. Now we don't need this start transition. Actually this start transition can directly be is part of this use transition, like use state returns an array of 2 elements. But here the difference is that the first element is something called is pending. The second item in that array is start transition. Now the start transition I don't need to import it directly, so this is directly being used here. If you don't use this is pending, then this is right now, if it is unused, then this is as good as whatever we did earlier, exactly the same. So I click, loading is there, it is done. When I click, and then nothing is there, and then suddenly it changes to 2. Okay, so this is exactly the same, but now I can use this is pending with start transition. So now here I said that in class component is pending sort of thing you have to implement on your own. Here they already give you this sort of variable which you can do whatever you want, you can do with that, right? So what I know, I know that and definitely this suspense thing is not working, right? So what I can do is that, let's say here here I do something like this, that is pending and so initially it will be what true, it is pending, which means that it is being when something is under the transition, then it is pending, right? Whenever it is pending, then you can show something that is pending. When that transition is completed, then it is no more pending, so this is pending will become false. But while the transition is happening, let's say from user 1 to user 2, you have clicked that button, while the transition is happening, at that point of time, which means that while this thing is marked and this thing is not applied completely, till that time this thing will be true, and in that time you can do something, anything on your own. So let's say I can have a, I don't know, div star star, and then let's say style color red. I'm just writing any random thing, but I'm just, let's say I'm writing star star, something like this. Okay, so now you see that now you can do something like this, where right now it is downloaded, everything, bundle is downloaded, but just the first component now needs to be loading, and then the first component is downloaded. Now if I click again, then you can see that this thing is fine, but then that star star was there, just to show that something was there. And now if you click again, then you can see that now, like it is very fast, because these things are already downloaded, right? But then yeah, it is just a case that I just I don't know, maybe used a stupid example, but you can use this variable in any way, wherever your requirement is something like that. I want to track that what is the time in which something is switching, but it is not downloaded, and in between that I want to show something to the user. Okay, so you can use this in those ways. So yeah, now you have a fair idea that how to create those things, and you can understand that now if I it might be clear, because in browser also we saw that separate files were downloaded, right? But you can clearly see here also that as a result of these optimizations, separate bundles are created. One more thing, let's say you use this thing, let's say, so you understand, you are using 4 lazy components, 2 here, to here, right? And maybe I have not used both of them, but let's say somewhere you're using both of them. But then also the separate components, separate files will be created uniquely for them. So this React.lazy, you're importing this. If even if you're using this, using the same thing in 2-3 files, still only one corresponding to user info 2, only one file will be created. Okay, so that React will automatically take care of. And you can see here that main bundle is fine. Apart from that, this this dot map you can ignore. This is just for some mapping of for debugging purposes, some mapping. I mean, just chunk.js, just focus on that. So that is one file, and then this is one file. So essentially just 2 files are there. These 2 files are corresponding to these 2 chunks, user info and user info 2. Okay, so now I think that should give you a fair idea of the optimization and code splitting part of React. Okay, so yeah, that should be fine. See you in the next one.